Did a 73-year-old country lawyer just destroy Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's entire political career on live television, armed with nothing but a single index card and 7 pieces of paper? Because what you're about to witness isn't political theater. It's a public execution by document. 11 seconds of silence. That's how long Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez sat frozen at the witness table, her signature red lipstick smudged across the corner of her mouth. She hadn't fixed it. Across from her, Senator John Neely Kennedy of Louisiana peered over half-moon reading glasses, waiting. The styrofoam coffee cup beside his single index card had been refilled twice that morning, and he wasn't finished asking questions. "I'm going to ask you one more time, ma'am. Yes or no? The same way I've been asking for the past 28 minutes. And then I'm going to stop asking because I think every Latina mother in the Bronx watching this hearing on her phone has already figured out the answer. What happened in the next 43 minutes would become the most viral congressional hearing of the decade. A country lawyer with a Louisiana drawl would systematically dismantle America's most followed progressive congresswoman using her own words, her own posts, her own signed letters. And the most devastating weapon in his arsenal wasn't anger or theatrics. It was a single word: normal. Let's rewind 28 minutes to the moment AOC made the fatal mistake any politician can make in front of a country lawyer. She insulted his accent. With respect to my colleague from Louisiana, and I do mean respect. She was 3 minutes into her opening remarks, wearing a fitted scarlet blazer over a black silk blouse. Her hair pulled back in a French braid, that red lipstick catching the C-SPAN lights from 12 feet away. The hearing room was Russell Caucus Room 325, the same historic chamber where Watergate had unfolded in 1973, where Iran-Contra had played out in '87. Every reporter in the front row understood the symbolism. I find it concerning that the senator from a state that ranks 48th in the nation in poverty, 47th in education, and 45th in healthcare access is the man my Republican colleagues have chosen to question my economic policy. And I would also note, Senator, that the affected drawl you've made famous on cable news, this aw shucks Madisonville accent that's become a kind of social media performance for your base, is a performance. She paused for effect. A junior staffer in the second row laughed on cue. The MSNBC reporter wrote, "Good open," in her notebook. You hold a law degree from the University of Virginia, a postgraduate diploma from Magdalen College at Oxford University. You speak the King's English fluently when the cameras are off. So when you address me today as ma'am and use the language of a Louisiana gas station attendant, Senator, with respect, that is not who you are. That is a costume. And the working-class Americans you claim to represent are entitled to know that the man speaking to them in what I'll call possum English is, when nobody's watching, an Oxford-educated lawyer who would not be caught dead saying "fixin' to" at the Yale Club. She sat back. Her communications director in the wings, a young woman named Sarah Nadim, who'd been with AOC since 2019, nodded once. What AOC didn't know was that the man at the lower bench had spent the previous evening in a small Senate office with 1 staff member and 7 documents. He'd written on a single 3x5 index card every question he intended to ask. 36 words, same length as the Lord's Prayer. Those 7 documents sat stacked beside the card, face down, in the exact order he planned to use them. Senator Kennedy didn't respond right away. He set down the blue pen in his right hand, removed the half-moon reading glasses from his nose. They hung from the silver chain around his neck, catching the C-SPAN light. 17 seconds passed. He lifted the styrofoam cup, took a small sip, set it back down. Then he turned the microphone toward himself. "Ma'am, thank you kindly for the welcome." The drawl was thick. Madisonville thick. The kind of accent that had become the most viral political voice in the United States Senate for 15 straight years. You know, where I come from, my grandmother used to keep chickens, about 15 of them. She named every one. She had this one rooster, big, mean Rhode Island red, that used to crow about 4:30 every morning, wake up the whole holler. My grandmother, bless her heart, never minded. She said, "Johnny, the rooster ain't crowin' to brag. He's crowin' because the sun's comin' up whether he likes it or not." I always thought that was pretty good advice. He picked up the index card, held it up for the cameras. "Now, Congresswoman, I got one card right here, about 4 by 6 inches. Got my own handwriting on it, front and back. About 36 words, same as the Lord's Prayer." He set the card back down. "And I'm fixin' to ask you about every single one of them." He put the glasses back on. "And before we begin, ma'am, for the record, since you asked, I do speak the King's English when the cameras are off. The King's English, just don't ask the kind of questions a country lawyer from Madisonville does." A small smile. Tired, not cruel. "Today, ma'am, the country lawyer's going to ask the questions." Kennedy reached for the first document. He laid it on the bench face up. The camera zoomed in. The cover page read, "In the matter of allegations relating to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, final report of the Committee on Ethics, July 25, 2025. Ma'am, I got in front of me a 156-page report issued July 25, 2025, signed by 10 members of the United States House Committee on Ethics, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats, bipartisan, unanimous. The report is about you." A pause. "On page 62, ma'am, the committee uses 2 words. The 2 words are impermissibly accepted. They're talking about a $30,000 Met Gala ticket. The ticket was for your boyfriend at the time, Mr. Riley Roberts. House rules don't allow that ticket to be free. The committee said you accepted it anyway." He looked up. "Yes or no, ma'am? Did the committee use those 2 words? AOC's voice arrived with the cadence she used on cable news. "Senator Kennedy, before I answer that question, I want to address the framing of this hearing. The House Ethics Committee specifically determined that my violations were not knowing and willful. The matter has been adjudicated. I have remitted the additional payments required. The fines have been paid. The procedural questions have been answered. What you are doing today, bringing this matter back into the public record at a Senate hearing where I am invited as a House observer, is itself a violation of the comity that has historically governed relations between the chambers. I would ask, with respect, that you direct your questions toward matters of substance. Honey." With respect, the press section caught it. He'd called her honey on a federal microphone. Kennedy never called anyone honey on a federal microphone. The Atlantic correspondent wrote in his notebook, "There it is. I didn't ask if it was closed, ma'am. I didn't ask about knowing and willful. I didn't ask about the comity between the chambers. I asked you a yes or no question. Did the committee use the 2 words impermissibly accepted on page 62 of the report? Yes or no?" A pause. "Senator, the question of whether specific words appear in a report is yes or no, ma'am." A longer pause. "Yes, Senator." "Thank you kindly. Now, ma'am, there's a second number on page 62. The number is 178. As in days. As in how long a black female designer named Aurora James, who designed your dress, waited to be paid $300 by your campaign. 178 days. Yes or no, ma'am? Does the committee report contain that number?" "Senator, vendor payment delays of this kind are frankly a normal part of campaign operations and major event logistics." The hearing room changed. A ripple, not a sound exactly, but a movement of bodies, ran through the press section. 2 reporters in the front row stopped writing. The MSNBC correspondent put her pen down. The Atlantic reporter underlined the word he'd just written. Normal. Kennedy didn't move. He didn't interrupt. He let her finish. delays of this magnitude in vendor processing, particularly for events involving complex multi-party arrangements with high fashion designers, are unfortunately common in the industry. Aurora James was a partner in the political messaging of that event. She understood the strategic nature of the engagement. The fact that the final payment processing took longer than originally scheduled does not, in itself, constitute the kind of misconduct that this hearing is suggesting. Ma'am, with respect, I'm going to stop you right there. The drawl was very quiet now. Now, you said two things in that answer that I want every American watching this hearing to hear repeated back slowly, because I think the country missed it the first time. A pause. First, you called Aurora James, and I'm quoting you, not me, a partner. That's a partner who waited 5 months for $300. Where I come from, ma'am, when somebody tells me they're my partner in a business and then makes me wait 5 months to be paid, we don't call him a partner. We got a different word for that. The word is the lady who got stiffed. The press section didn't laugh. The press section was past laughing. Second, you said vendor payment delays of this kind are, and I'm quoting you again, a normal part of campaign operations. End quote. He looked up. The glasses caught the light. Normal, ma'am. 178 days for a black female small business owner to be paid $300 by the congresswoman wearing "Tax the Rich" on the back of a $30,000 dress that the black female small business owner had designed. That's normal, ma'am? Okay. He let it sit. The country just heard you call it normal. We're going to let that sit on the record. We're going to come back to it. Because the word normal, ma'am, when used by a sitting congresswoman in front of 4 million Americans about a black female small business owner waiting 178 days for $300, that word, ma'am, is going to ride with you. Kennedy reached for the second piece of paper, laid it next to the first. The cameras zoomed. It was a screenshot of an Instagram video dated January 15, 2023. The image showed AOC at a kitchen table. Ma'am, this is a screenshot from an Instagram video you posted in January of 2023 about Aurora James and the Met Gala dress. You said on that video, and I am quoting you, not me, I just never, ever, ever would have allowed that to happen, knowing what I have learned. End quote. A pause. That's 3 nevers, ma'am. You used 3 nevers about a payment delay to a black female designer. Another pause. Yes or no? Did you say that on Instagram in January of 2023? Senator, the context of those remarks, yes or no, ma'am? A pause, longer than before. Yes, thank you kindly. Kennedy reached for the third piece of paper, laid it next to the first 2. The camera zoomed. It was a printed letter, letterhead at the top, Matrani Rayner LLP, Counsel to Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Ma'am, this is a letter dated May 5, 2025, from your counsel to the House Ethics Committee, submitted as part of the committee's investigation, submitted under penalty of false statement. A beat. The letter says, and again I'm quoting your own counsel, not me, the Congresswoman was not aware of these costs and did not authorize these costs. End quote. He looked up. Yes or no, ma'am? Did your counsel write that letter? My counsel filed a procedural response to the committee's findings. The response addresses, yes or no, ma'am. Did your counsel write that letter? Yes, thank you, ma'am. Kennedy didn't move. He let the silence sit. 5 seconds, 10, then, quietly, ma'am, I want every American watching this hearing to listen real careful to what's about to happen, because I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to answer it yes or no. A pause. In January of 2023, on Instagram, you said, I never, ever, ever would have allowed that to happen. That's 3 nevers. That's a person saying she would have stopped it. In May of 2025, your counsel said the Congresswoman was not aware of these costs and did not authorize these costs. That's a person saying she didn't know about it. His eyes found AOC. Ma'am, Yes or no? Can both of those statements be true at the same time? The hearing room was silent. AOC opened her mouth, closed it. Her right hand drifted to the engagement ring on her left finger. She turned it once. Senator, the statements are addressing different stages of the matter. The 2023 video was made before the committee's investigation had revealed certain facts. The 2025 letter from my counsel was made after the investigation had progressed to a point where… Ma'am, yes or no? Can both statements be true? The statements are not mutually exclusive. Ma'am, the country is waiting. Yes or no? Can both statements be true at the same time? No. Thank you, ma'am. A long pause. Kennedy didn't move. So one of them, ma'am, is a lie. We agree on that. The country agrees on that. The committee agrees on that. The 4 million Americans watching this hearing tonight in their living rooms agree on that. Now the question is, which one? The 2023 statement was on Instagram, to your followers, to the small donors who'd given you their $25. The 2025 statement was to the United States Congress, under penalty of false statement. A beat. So, ma'am, and this is the question I want every American watching to think about tonight when they put their phone down and go to sleep. Did you lie to your donors, or did you lie to your government? The hearing room was silent. In the wings, Sarah Nadim had stopped texting. She was holding her phone screen down, the way people hold phones when they realize the message discipline they've been hired to enforce has a structural flaw they were never told about. Kennedy didn't press. He let the silence sit. You don't have to answer today, ma'am. The country already has. He reached for the fourth piece of paper, laid it next to the first three. The cameras zoomed. It was a public photograph, 8 by 10, of Aurora James, a black woman in her 30s, standing in front of her Brooklyn workshop, hair tied back. The photograph had a public Instagram caption underneath, dated November 2025. 178 days. The math is in your hands, ma'am. You don't have to read Aurora James's caption out loud. The country already did, 43 million times by sundown. Kennedy reached for the fifth piece of paper. The cameras followed. Ma'am, I'm going to tell you a little story now about a man named Psychot. Where I come from, that's a real fancy name. We don't have any Psychots in Madisonville, Louisiana. We got a few Psychots now in New Orleans since the Vietnamese refugees came, but none in Madisonville. Psychot Chakrabarty, ma'am, was your chief of staff. He's a multimillionaire. He was a founding engineer at a Silicon Valley company called Stripe. He bought a house for $1.6 million. A pause. And his salary, while he was working for you in the United States Congress, was $80,000, not a penny more. He let it sit. Ma'am, yes or no? Was Mr. Chakrabarty's annual salary as your chief of staff $80,000? Senator, my chief of staff's compensation was set in accordance with the standard rates for a congressional office of our size. The decisions about salary structure were made in consultation with our chief of staff and our payroll team based on the applicable federal pay scales. Yes or no, ma'am? Yes. Thank you kindly. Now, federal law says any congressional staffer making more than $126,000 a year has to file an additional disclosure form. Tells the public about all his other money, his investments, his side businesses, his gifts. Yes or no, ma'am? Is that the federal disclosure threshold? Senator, the disclosure rules are administered by the House Office of Compliance. Yes or no, ma'am? Yes. And ma'am, Mr. Chakrabarty's salary was $80,000, just below that disclosure threshold. So, Mr. Chakrabarty, your multimillionaire chief of staff who bought a $1.6 million house never had to file the form. Yes or no? Did Mr. Chakrabarty, while serving as your chief of staff, ever file the federal financial disclosure form required of staffers above that threshold? A pause. No, Senator, he was not above the threshold. Thank you, ma'am. He picked up the styrofoam cup, took a sip, set it back down. My grandmother had a saying for that, ma'am. She used to say, when somebody charges a price ending in 99 cents, they're trying to make you think it's $1 less. $80,000, ma'am, is the price ending in 99 cents on Psychot's salary. Just below the threshold. By coincidence? The way the rooster in my grandmother's holler always crowed at 4:30 by coincidence every morning before the sun came up? A beat. Now, ma'am, Mr. Chakrabarty, while he was making $80,000 a year as your chief of staff, was also running 2 political action committees on the side. Yes or no? Was Mr. Chakrabarty also running Brand New Congress PAC and Justice Democrats PAC? Yes. And, ma'am, were you in 2017 and the early part of 2018 sitting on the board of Justice Democrats PAC? I served briefly on the board. Yes, Senator. Thank you kindly. He picked up the index card, read from the back. Now, ma'am, sitting alongside the 2 PACs were 2 limited liability companies, Brand New Congress LLC, Brand New Campaign LLC. Same fellow running all 4, Mr. Chakrabarty. Public corporate filings. Yes or no? Were both LLCs controlled by Mr. Chakrabarty? Yes. Thank you, ma'am. This was the moment Kennedy did the thing. The drawl, very quietly, was put away. Not gone. Put on a hook by the door. The voice that came out of the microphone was different. The press section had heard him do this once before, in a different hearing, against a different congressman from California. 2 reporters in the second row sat up straight. The voice was the voice of a man with a law degree from the University of Virginia, magna cum laude, 1977. A postgraduate diploma in law and government from Magdalen College, Oxford University, with first-class honors. It was the voice of an attorney about to cite an opinion to a federal court. PACs, under the Federal Election Campaign Act of 1971, are required to itemize all expenditures. Public record. Every dollar in, every dollar out. Limited liability companies under federal law are not. LLCs are, for federal disclosure purposes, a black box. A pause. Between 2017 and 2018, $885,000 moved from the 2 PACs, where the public could see every dollar, into the 2 LLCs, where the public could see no dollar at all. The transfers were labeled on the FEC forms Strategic Consulting. Once the money landed in the LLCs, federal regulators could not trace where it went. The public donors, the small donor base that gave to your PACs because you were running on a campaign of fighting money in politics, they could not trace where their money went. The Oxford voice didn't pause. Mr. Hans von Spakovsky, former commissioner of the Federal Election Commission, evaluated this scheme in writing for the Daily Caller News Foundation. He stated, and I quote, "If the facts as alleged are true, and a candidate had control over a PAC that was working to get that candidate elected, then that candidate is potentially in very big trouble and may have engaged in multiple violations of federal campaign finance law, including receiving excessive contributions." He went on to specify, up to 5 years prison per violation, end quote. A pause. Eyes on AOC, the Oxford voice unblinking. Per violation. Plural. By the National Legal and Policy Center's count, the scheme contains dozens of potential violations. The drawl came back. The Oxford voice went back on the hook. Now, ma'am, I'm putting my drawl back on, because the federal courtroom voice ain't gonna explain this part. 3 weeks before that complaint was formally filed, you posted a tweet. I got it right here in front of me. He laid the printed tweet on the bench. The camera zoomed. Date: January 20th, 2019. Caption: AOC's verified Twitter handle. Money in politics is the why behind every issue. Why we don't have universal health care. Why we don't have a Green New Deal. Why we don't have justice. Big money in politics is a corrupt cancer. End quote. He set the tweet down. Yes or no, ma'am? On January 20th, 2019, did you post that tweet? Senator, my Twitter account is well documented. The tweets I have posted about money and politics reflect a consistent set of values that I have held for my entire political career. The voters of New York's 14th Congressional District know me. They have known me since I was a girl growing up in Yorktown. They trust me with their $25 donations because they know exactly where every penny goes. I am not Mr. Chakrabarty. I am not Brand New Congress LLC. I am Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The American people understand the difference. The voters of the Bronx understand the difference. And, Senator, with respect, your colleagues in the Republican Party have spent 8 straight years trying to erase that difference. I will not let you erase it today. The progressive press section moved. Once. Twice. A producer in the back stood up, but the country had heard the line. Kennedy waited. He didn't interrupt. He let the silence land. Ma'am, you said 2 things in there I want to repeat back slowly. A pause. First, you said your donors know exactly where every penny goes. End quote. He picked up the index card, tapped it once. Yes or no, ma'am? Does the federal government know where the $885,000 went? A pause. Senator, the FEC review. Yes or no, ma'am? The FEC has. Ma'am? Yes or no? Does the federal government, the United States government, under any agency, in any office, with any subpoena power, does the federal government know today where the $885,000 went? A long beat. No, Senator. Thank you, ma'am. Now, yes or no? Has Mr. Chakrabarty in the past 7 years ever publicly disclosed where the $885,000 went? No. And ma'am, yes or no? Has any auditor, internal or external, public or private, ever produced a public accounting of where the $885,000 went? No. Thank you, ma'am. So, your donors, the small donor base, you said know exactly where every penny goes. They don't know. The federal government doesn't know. Mr. Chakrabarty's accountant, if there is one, hasn't told anyone. Nobody in the United States of America, ma'am, knows where the $885,000 went, except Mr. Chakrabarty himself. A long pause. That's not transparency, ma'am. That's the opposite of transparency. That's the corrupt cancer you tweeted about. He let it sit. Second, you said, and I quote, I am not Mr. Chakrabarty. I am Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. The American people understand the difference. A small, tired smile. Ma'am, you're correct. You are not Mr. Chakrabarty. The country can see that. The country was not confused. But Mr. Chakrabarty was your chief of staff. You hired him. You put him in charge of your office. You introduced him at fundraisers. You sat next to him at hearings. The country didn't elect you because they trusted Mr. Chakrabarty. They elected you because they trusted you to vet the people you put in your office. A pause. So when Mr. Chakrabarty's slush fund disappeared $885,000, that's your hire, ma'am. That's your office. That's your name on the door. The American people, ma'am, they understand the difference between Mr. Chakrabarty and you. What they're asking tonight, ma'am, is whether you understand the difference between being a congresswoman and being a hostess for a party that loots the donor base while you tweet about cancer. Where I come from, ma'am, when a fellow with a tumor calls cancer corrupt, we don't call him a doctor. We call him an undertaker. The hearing room was silent. Kennedy turned the index card sideways. There was a small box drawn on it. The word inside the box read, wept. He laid a 6th piece of paper on the bench next to the others. The camera zoomed. It was a printed Twitter post, 3 pages. A handwritten note had been clipped to the top. Ma'am, September 25th, 2021. The day after you stood on the floor of the United States House of Representatives and voted present on the $1 billion Iron Dome supplemental funding bill, you posted a 3-page letter to your constituents. I got the letter right here. I read the whole thing twice. A pause. 3 sentences from the letter, ma'am. I'm going to read them out loud, and then I'm going to ask you about each one. He picked up the printed letter, read slowly. First sentence. Yes, I wept. End quote. A beat. Second sentence. I wept at the complete lack of care for the human beings who are impacted by these decisions. End quote. A beat. Third sentence. To those I have disappointed, I am deeply sorry. End quote. He set the letter down, looked at AOC. Yes or no, ma'am? Did you write those 3 sentences? Senator, I want to address this letter directly. The letter was written in a moment of profound moral conflict. I had spent days consulting with my Jewish constituents, with Palestinian-American constituents, with rabbis, with imams, with students who had lost family members on both sides of that conflict. The Iron Dome vote came at me with no warning, no committee process, no markup. It was rushed to the floor in a way that bypassed every rule of regular order. I voted present because I did not believe, and I still do not believe, that a vote of that magnitude should be cast in the absence of legitimate deliberation. The tears I shed on the House floor were tears of frustration with a process that did not respect the seriousness of the issue. They were not, as your framing suggests, tears for myself. The press section moved. 2 reporters in the front row turned to each other. One mouthed, frustration with the process. The Atlantic correspondent in the second row underlined the phrase in his notebook 3 times. Kennedy didn't interrupt. He let her finish. Ma'am, you just told the country on a federal microphone that you wept on the House floor because of frustration with the legislative process. A pause. That's a real interesting answer, ma'am. Because where I come from, frustration with process is the kind of thing a person feels at the DMV when the line is long, when the clerk is slow, when the form says, "Please print legibly," and your pen has run out of ink. Frustration with process is the kind of thing a person feels when the cable company puts you on hold. Frustration with process is not, historically, in the United States Congress, the kind of thing a sitting member cries about on the floor of the House of Representatives in front of 12 million Americans on national television. A beat. Yes or no, ma'am? Were the tears you shed on September 23, 2021, comparable to the kind of frustration a person feels at the DMV? Senator, that is not what I... Yes or no, ma'am? A long pause. No. Then, ma'am, I'm going to ask you again. What did you weep for? She didn't answer. Let me make it easier on the country, ma'am. Let me ask the question a different way. Yes or no? Did you write the 3 sentences I just read from your letter? Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Now, the third sentence. To those I have disappointed. 3 groups of people were affected by your vote that day, ma'am, by my count. The Israeli civilians whose apartment buildings the Iron Dome had been protecting for 15 years. The Jewish families in your district whose grandparents survived the Holocaust, and the BDS activists who wanted you to vote no. Yes or no? Were those the 3 groups affected by your vote? Senator, the situation was more nuanced. Yes or no, ma'am? 3 groups? Yes. Thank you. Now, yes or no, did the bill ultimately pass? Yes, 420 to 9. Thank you, ma'am. So Iron Dome got its $1 billion. The system was funded. The Israeli civilians whose apartment buildings were being protected, they were not disappointed. The Iron Dome got its money. Yes or no, ma'am? Were the Israeli civilians disappointed by the outcome of the vote? A long beat. No. And the Jewish families in your district? Yes or no? Were they disappointed by the outcome of the vote? No. Thank you, ma'am. A long pause. Now, ma'am, yes or no? By process of elimination, when you wrote to those I have disappointed in sentence 3 of your letter, were you apologizing to the BDS activists? The hearing room was silent. AOC's right hand drifted to the engagement ring, turned at once, stopped. Senator, the letter addresses the broader context of the vote. The communities who felt unrepresented in the rushed process were across multiple groups. The letter was not addressed to any one specific community. It was addressed, Ma'am, of the 3 groups affected by your vote, only one was disappointed by the outcome. The Israeli civilians were not disappointed. The Jewish families in your district were not disappointed. By process of elimination, yes or no? Were you apologizing to the BDS activists? A pause. Senator, the question presumes a binary that, yes or no, ma'am, the country is waiting. The letter expresses concern for those whose voices were not heard in the rushed process. Ma'am, that's a yes. A long beat. Now, sentence 1. Yes, I wept. Yes or no, ma'am. Did you weep on the House floor that day? Yes. And sentence 2. I wept at the complete lack of care for the human beings who are impacted by these decisions. Yes or no? When you wrote, the human beings who are impacted by these decisions, were you talking about the Israeli civilians whose apartment building's Iron Dome was protecting? Senator, the human cost of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, yes or no, ma'am? Were you talking about the Israeli civilians? The language refers to a broader human cost. Ma'am, yes or no? Were the Israeli civilians the human beings you wept for? A long beat. The letter does not specifically, ma'am. That's a no. The hearing room was very quiet now. So, ma'am, we have established by your own letter, read on the record with your own yeses and nos. He looked up. The half-moon glasses caught the light. You wept, ma'am, on the floor of the United States House of Representatives, on national television. And what you wept for, by your own admission, was not the Israeli civilians the system was protecting. You wept for the process. You wept because you'd been forced into a vote you didn't want to take. You wept because the BDS activists you were trying to satisfy were going to be unhappy with you. You wept, ma'am, and I want to be very precise. For yourself. A long pause. Where I come from, ma'am, when a child gets hurt, the mother weeps for the child, not for the rules of the game. Not for the politics, not for the audience watching on Instagram. She weeps for the child. A beat. You did not weep for any child that day, ma'am. The children Iron Dome was protecting. The Israeli children whose mothers' hands were not empty that week. They did not appear in your letter. Not by name, not as a category, not as a hypothetical. They are not in any of the 3 pages. He picked up the letter, held it up. 3 pages. I read it twice, ma'am. They are not in here. He set the letter down. The hearing room was silent. Kennedy turned the index card to the last line of handwriting. He laid a 7th piece of paper on the bench beside the letter. The camera zoomed. It was a printed copy of an email. Subject line in bold. I thought I was going to die that day. Sent date, January 28th, 2021. From Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez for Congress. Beside the email, he laid an 8th piece of paper. The Senate vote record from January 27th, 2021. AOC's name was visible. Her vote? No. Ma'am, 3 numbers. 21. 2.3 million. And no. I'm fixing to make sure the 4 million Americans watching tonight understand each one. A pause. On January 6th, 2021, the United States Capitol was attacked. 140 Capitol police officers were injured. Officer Brian Sicknick, 36 years old, was hit with bear spray and a fire extinguisher. He died the next day. Yes or no, ma'am? Did Officer Sicknick die in the line of duty on January 7th, 2021? Yes. And ma'am, On January 27, 2021, 21 days after Officer Sicknick died, the United States Senate voted on a $1.9 billion supplemental funding bill for Capitol Police to pay for medical care for the injured officers, to pay for security upgrades. He picked up the vote record, held it forward. Yes or no, ma'am? Did you vote no on that bill? Senator Kennedy, I voted against that bill because the Capitol Police, like every police department in this country, requires reform, not more militarization. The bill contained funding for offensive equipment that would have further militarized the Capitol grounds. The Capitol Police themselves are not above the accountability that every law enforcement agency in this country must face. They are not heroes simply because they were assigned to the building on January 6th. They are public servants. They serve the United States Congress, yes, but they also serve the American public, including the American public's right to peaceful protest. Some of the people who entered the Capitol that day were peaceful protesters who had legitimate grievances about election integrity. The Capitol Police, in some cases, escalated tensions. The funding bill I voted against would have rewarded that escalation. As for the fundraising email, Senator, my campaign sent that email because the experience of January 6th had a profound impact on me as a Latina woman of color in a building that was not designed for people who look like me. The donors who responded to that email were responding to a personal narrative that I have every right to tell. The hearing room moved. 3 reporters in the front row stopped writing. The MSNBC correspondent put her pen down for the second time that morning. The Atlantic correspondent in the second row wrote 3 things in his notebook. He underlined all 3. Capitol Police not above accountability. Some of them were peaceful protesters. Building not designed for people who look like me. Kennedy didn't move. He let the silence land. Ma'am, you just said 3 things on a federal microphone that I want every American watching this hearing to hear repeated back one at a time, slowly. A pause. First, you said the Capitol Police are not above the accountability that every law enforcement agency must face. End quote. A quiet beat. Ma'am, on January 6, 2021, when the mob breached the perimeter of the United States Capitol, were the Capitol Police at that moment in need of reform? Or were they at that moment in need of bear spray being taken off their faces? A long pause. Senator, my comments about systemic accountability, yes or no, ma'am? At 2:43 p.m. on January 6, 2021, were the Capitol Police in need of reform? A pause. No, Senator. Thank you, ma'am. A beat. Second, you said some of the people who entered the Capitol that day were peaceful protesters who had legitimate grievances about election integrity. End quote. He set the vote record down. Ma'am, that day the United States Senate was in session inside this very building, certifying the Electoral College vote. The Capitol Police was the line between the people you just called peaceful protesters and the senators inside. Yes or no, ma'am? Were the Capitol Police, on January 6th, the line between the so-called peaceful protesters and the United States Congress? Yes. And, ma'am, yes or no, did the people you described as peaceful protesters attempt to cross that line? Senator, I think the question of who attempted to cross which line is yes or no, ma'am. Some did. And, ma'am, yes or no, did the people you described as peaceful protesters injure 140 Capitol Police officers in attempting to cross that line? A long pause. Some of them did, Senator. Thank you, ma'am. The drawl was very quiet now. Third, you said the Capitol building was not designed for people who look like you. End quote. A beat. Ma'am, Officer Brian Sicknick, 36 years old, born in South River, New Jersey, Italian-American, Air National Guard veteran. Was Officer Sicknick designed by the architects of the Capitol building? Or was Officer Sicknick a 36-year-old human being from New Jersey who showed up to work on January 6, 2021, and did his job? A long pause. Senator, that is not what I... Yes or no, ma'am? Was Officer Sicknick a human being who showed up to work and did his job? Yes. Thank you, ma'am. A pause. Now, ma'am, Officer Sicknick had a fiancée. Her name was Sandra Garza. She wrote a public letter to your office in February of 2021. She asked you to vote yes on the funding bill. She asked you to honor her fiancé's memory. The letter is in the public record. It was published in the Washington Examiner. Yes or no, ma'am? Did your office respond to that letter? Senator, I do not personally manage every constituent communication. Yes or no, ma'am? Did your office respond to Sandra Garza's letter about Officer Sicknick? A long pause. I would have to check the records. Ma'am, yes or no? Has Sandra Garza, in the 4 years since she wrote that letter, ever publicly stated that your office responded to it? A pause. No, Senator. Thank you, ma'am. A long pause. Kennedy let it sit. Now, ma'am, the same week as the vote, I am holding a fundraising email your campaign sent on January 28, 2021, the day after the vote. The subject line reads, I thought I was going to die that day. End quote. Yes or no, ma'am? Did your campaign send that email? Yes. And, ma'am, by your own FEC filings, in the period of January 25th through 31st, 2021, did your campaign committee receive $2.3 million in small donor contributions? Yes. Thank you, ma'am. He set the email down, set the vote record down, squared them on the bench. Now, ma'am, let me make sure the country understands the timeline. On January 6th, the Capitol Police took bear spray for you. They held the line between the mob and your office. Officer Sicknick died the next day. On January 27th, 21 days later, you voted no on $1.9 billion in funding for the same Capitol Police. The next day, January 28th, your campaign sent a fundraising email. The email said, I thought I was going to die that day. The Capitol Police saved my life. In the 7 days that followed, that email raised $2.3 million from the small donor base that thought they were helping the Capitol Police. He paused, looked up. Ma'am, yes or no? Same week, 21 days, $2.3 million, no vote. Is that the timeline? The hearing room was silent. This was the moment. AOC's right hand drifted to her face, to her mouth. The hand stayed 3 seconds, 5, 8. When she lowered her hand slowly, the way a person lowers a hand when she's just realized something physical is wrong with her face, the cameras saw it. Her signature red lipstick, the lipstick that had been her cable news brand for 8 straight years. The lipstick that the New York Times Styles section had once called the most recognizable signature in American progressive politics. The lipstick was smudged across the lower right corner of her mouth, a streak of red, approximately 2 centimeters wide. She didn't fix it. She reached for her water bottle. The hand stopped halfway, returned to the table. She said nothing. The C-SPAN producer in the truck zoomed in. 12 million American screens watched. A streak of red lipstick remained on the mouth of America's most followed progressive congresswoman. The brand was broken. The brand was broken on national television. The brand could not be fixed by any communications director. In the wings, Sarah Nadim had stopped looking at her phone. She was looking at AOC's mouth the way a person looks at a building she's worked in for 10 years that is slowly collapsing. Kennedy spoke. The voice was lower than it had been all morning. Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time. Yes or no? Was that the timeline? A beat. Senator, the contextualization, ma'am, yes or no? Yes. Thank you, ma'am. A long pause. Now, ma'am, I want every American watching this hearing, every Latina mother in the Bronx, every retired Capitol Police officer holding loan paperwork for the dental work he had to take out of pocket, every small donor who gave you $25 after that email because they thought they were helping the police who saved your life. I want all of them to understand exactly what they just heard. Quieter. You called the Capitol Police not above accountability. 21 days after they took bear spray for you. You called the people who beat them with flagpoles peaceful protesters with legitimate grievances. You said the Capitol building was not designed for people who look like you. And the country just heard a 36-year-old Italian-American from New Jersey die holding the line for you. A pause. You can put lipstick on a pig, ma'am, but come Sunday morning, it's still bacon. The hearing room was silent. In the wings, Sarah Nadim was no longer looking at her phone. She was no longer looking at AOC. She was gathering her notebook into a small pile, the way a staffer gathers her notebook when the boss is about to lose the argument, and the staffer's job will, in the next 24 hours, become very difficult. Kennedy didn't produce another card. He turned the index card over. The back had been blank for the entire hearing. The handwriting had only been on the front. He picked up the blue pen. He wrote one word on the blank back of the card, slowly. The cameras saw the pen move. The word was evidence. He set the pen down. He stood up. The press section recorded the moment. Senator Kennedy didn't, in hearings, stand up. The press section had covered his hearings for 15 years. Two reporters in the second row, both veterans of his prior interrogations, said the same thing under their breath at the same time. He has never done this before. He walked to the witness table slowly. The cameras followed. He carried with him the 7 pieces of paper he'd laid on the bench. He laid them down on the witness table in front of AOC, one by one. The first paper, the House Ethics Committee report, page 62 visible. Same week, ma'am. The Met Gala stairs and the 178-day wait. The second paper, the Instagram screenshot. I just never, ever, ever would have allowed that to happen. Same week, ma'am. The 3 nevers and the council letter that said you didn't know. The third paper. The Twitter post from January 20th, 2019. Big money in politics is a corrupt cancer. Same week, ma'am. The corrupt cancer tweet. And the $885,000 disappearing through your Chief of Staff's LLCS. The fourth paper. The Iron Dome letter. Yes, I wept. Same week, ma'am. You weeping for yourself on the House floor, and the Israeli children walking into school under the sky Iron Dome was protecting? The fifth paper. The Senate vote record. No. The sixth paper. The fundraising email. I thought I was going to die that day. Same week, ma'am. The no vote on Capitol Police funding, and the $2.3 million you raised off the Capitol Police being nearly killed protecting you. He laid the seventh paper, the public photograph of Aurora James, on top of the others. And, same week, ma'am. Same week. Each time. He stood at the witness table. He didn't return to the bench. The cameras held on him. AOC's left hand drifted to her water bottle, stopped halfway, returned to the table. The first second. The second. The lipstick smudge was still on her mouth. She hadn't noticed it. Or she'd noticed it and decided not to fix it. It was impossible to tell. The third second. The fourth. The fifth. The sixth. She looked at her communications director. Sarah Nadim was no longer looking at her. The seventh. The eighth. She looked at the 7 pieces of paper on the witness table. She didn't read any of them. She'd read all of them already. The 9th second. This was the moment the cameras saw it before AOC did. The C-SPAN producer in the truck zoomed in. 12 million American screens leaned forward at the same time. A single tear formed at the corner of her right eye. It didn't fall yet. It hung. The eye blinked. The tear released. It fell slowly down the right side of her face, past her cheek, toward the corner of her mouth. The lipstick smudge was still there. The tear hit the smudge. The mascara on her right eye, which had been holding for 43 minutes of cable news composure, let go. A second streak appeared, black mixing with the red, forming a darker line down the corner of her mouth, that the cameras hadn't seen before in 8 years of broadcasting her face. She didn't wipe it. A second tear formed at the corner of her left eye, then a third. They fell silently, the way a person cries when she's run out of words but hasn't yet run out of feelings. For 12 seconds, on national television, in front of 4 million live viewers and 71 million on the clip that would post by sundown, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez wept silently for herself. In the wings, Sarah Nadim closed her eyes. Kennedy didn't move. The drawl, when it came, was the quietest it had been all morning. "Ma'am, I want every American watching this hearing, when they put their phone down tonight and go to sleep, to remember something. A beat." On September 23, 2021, 3 years and 5 months ago, you stood on the floor of the United States House of Representatives and you wept. 12 million Americans watched you weep. You wrote a 3-page letter the next day. The first sentence of that letter was, "Yes, I wept." A pause. Tonight, ma'am, at the witness table of the Russell Caucus Room, the country just watched you weep again. A long beat. For yourself. Twice in 4 years, you have wept on a federal microphone for yourself. Not for Aurora James, not for the Israeli children Iron Dome saved, not for Officer Sicknick's fiancée, Sandra Garza, not for the 11-year-old boy whose mother, a black female designer in Bed-Stuy, could not afford to feed because she was waiting 178 days for $300. You have wept, ma'am, twice, for yourself. A pause. That's not something you'd want on the public record, ma'am, but it's already there. The country just watched. 40 million times by sundown, 70 million by tomorrow night, 100 million by Friday. A long beat. And ma'am, there is no press release in the world that fixes that footage. There is no communications director who can write that footage off the public record. There is no statement your office can issue tomorrow that puts the mascara back where it was at 9:00 a.m. A pause. You wept for yourself, ma'am. The country saw it. The country isn't gonna unsee it. He nodded once. He didn't gather the 7 pieces of paper. He left them on the witness table. He picked up only the index card. He folded it in half. He put it in his shirt pocket. He walked back to the bench, picked up the half-moon reading glasses. They went into his other coat pocket. He picked up the styrofoam coffee cup, didn't drink from it. He turned to the chairman. "Mr. Chairman, I yield the remainder of my time." The 7 pieces of paper on the witness table are entered into the record. The country can read them tonight. The chairman gave a 30-minute recess. AOC stood. She didn't gather her papers quickly. She didn't gather them at all. She left them on the witness table beside the 7 pieces of paper Kennedy had laid down. She didn't look at Sarah Nadim. She didn't look at Kennedy. She walked to the side door. The mascara streak walked with her. The lipstick smudge walked with her. The tears, by the time she reached the door, had stopped falling, but the streaks remained on her face. At the door, she turned. The cameras followed. Kennedy was still standing at the bench. He hadn't sat back down. He was looking at the 7 pieces of paper on the witness table. He wasn't looking at her. "Congresswoman, my door's open, ma'am. Any time you want to bring any of those 4 arguments, we'll go through them together. The Senate will wait." A pause. Quieter still. "Hunt's Point was listening, ma'am." She didn't respond. She walked out. The mascara streak walked with her. The door closed behind her with the kind of sound a heavy door makes when nobody on either side wants to slam it, but nobody wants to soften it either. The aftermath came fast. By 11:38 a.m. Eastern, 4 hashtags occupied the top 4 trending positions on every American platform. Number 1, she wept again. Number 2, mascara streak. Number 3, normal ma'am. Number 4, same week. The clip of Kennedy laying the 7 pieces of paper on AOC's witness table passed 62 million views by sundown. The clip of AOC's mascara streak forming in real time on national television 12 seconds, no audio, a single producer zoom. Passed 94 million. AOC's communications director released a statement at 1:14 p.m. 12 sentences. Used manufactured 4 times. Theater 3 times. Republican circus twice. Didn't mention Aurora James. Didn't mention Sandra Garza. Didn't mention the mascara. Didn't mention the lipstick. That statement, in a way, was the entire scandal in 12 sentences, because the woman who'd built her career on the brand of speaking truth to power had just spent 28 minutes of live television refusing to answer yes or no questions about her own Twitter posts, her own Instagram videos, her own counsel's letters, her own fundraising emails, and her own 3-page apology letter to her own constituents. Documents the squad had spent 8 years pretending nobody would ever read out loud on a federal microphone. This morning, somebody read them. This is the squad. In a single Wednesday morning, the squad, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Ilhan Omar, Rashida Tlaib, Ayanna Pressley, was sold to the American working class in 2018 as the new face of the Democratic Party. The bartender from the Bronx, the refugee from Somalia, the Palestinian from Detroit, the black woman from Boston. They were going to fight money in politics. They were going to take on the corporate Democrats. They were going to stand up for the forgotten. 8 years later, the receipts are in. And the receipts don't require fictional witnesses. They don't require theatrical sympathy. They don't require any imagined working-class American in a campaign ad. They require, instead, only that somebody on a federal microphone read out loud what AOC had already written, posted, signed, voted, and emailed in her own name. Read it out loud twice if necessary, with the cameras on. Because the scandal was never hidden. The scandal had been public the entire time. The Met Gala dress was public. The House Ethics Report was public. The Twitter post about money and politics being a corrupt cancer was public. The Iron Dome letter was public. The Capitol Police vote was public. The fundraising email was public. The $2.3 million in FEC filings was public. What had been hidden was a country lawyer willing to read it all in one sitting, with a single index card in plain English, and ask the only question that mattered: yes or no. The squad didn't break the floor for the working class. The squad walked across the floor over the working class to get to the Met Gala stairs. And the Democratic Party, watching all of this for 8 straight years, said nothing. Nancy Pelosi protected them. Hakeem Jeffries protected them. Chuck Schumer in the Senate defended them at every turn. Every Democratic leader in Washington, when given the choice between the squad and the working-class voters their party once served, chose the squad, chose the brand, chose the viral clips, chose the seat on Foreign Affairs with top-secret clearance for a member who'd lied to a Minnesota court about a photograph in London, chose to look the other way when their most followed congresswoman called Aurora James waiting 178 days for $300 normal, chose to look the other way when the same congresswoman called the Capitol Police not above accountability, 21 days after Officer Sicknick died in their service, chose to look the other way when the same congresswoman wept on the House floor for herself, and then, 4 years later, on a federal microphone in front of 4 million Americans, wept for herself again. The bill today came due. Not in a courtroom, not in a House ethics report, in a Russell caucus room with 7 pieces of paper on a witness table and a congresswoman from the Bronx, the bartender from Yorktown Heights, whose mascara streaked down her right cheek on national television because she could not, with any words at her command, answer yes or no to whether the same week each time was the same week each time. That refusal wasn't a personal failure. That refusal was the verdict on the entire progressive project of the last 8 years. The squad was never about the working class. The squad was about the squad, the donors, the cable news contracts, the Met Gala dresses, the boyfriends on the payroll, the dark money LLCs run by Silicon Valley multimillionaires, the Twitter followers, the Instagram live audiences, the book deals, the HBO documentaries. Aurora James paid the bill in 178 days of waiting for $300. $885,000 paid the bill by disappearing into Mr. Chakrabarty's LLCs, where the federal government still can't find it. The Israeli children Iron Dome saved paid the bill in being absent from a 3-page letter their American congresswoman wrote about her own tears. Officer Sicknick's fiancée, Sandra Garza, paid the bill in writing a letter in February of 2021 that AOC's office never answered. And the country, the working-class country the squad pretended to represent, paid the bill in 8 straight years of being lied to about who exactly was on their side. The congresswoman from the Bronx walked out of the Russell Building at 12:14 p.m. Her mascara had dried on her cheek. The lipstick smudge had dried on her mouth. The black SUV at the curb didn't know where to take her. Neither did she. The driver, after 23 minutes of circling the Capitol, finally asked, "Where to, ma'am?" She didn't answer, because there was no answer. The Bronx was not hers. Yorktown Heights had never been the Bronx. The Met Gala stairs had been bought with Aurora James's $300. With $2.3 million in small donor fundraising emails about an insurrection she voted no on. With 178 days of a black designer's waiting. With a letter that wept for the process and not for the children Iron Dome saved. With a fundraising appeal sent the day after she voted against the funding for the police who'd taken bear spray protecting her. There was no road today that took her home. In a Russell caucus room on a Wednesday morning, the country read 7 pieces of paper. And the congresswoman from the Bronx and the squad and the Democratic Party that protected them for 8 straight years could not, on a federal microphone, answer yes or no to whether any of the 7 pieces of paper had her name on them. If you made it this far, you just heard the morning a country lawyer from Madisonville, Louisiana, asked America's most followed progressive congresswoman 7 yes or no questions about 7 pieces of paper she'd written, posted, signed, voted, and emailed in her own name. On her own Twitter account, on her own Instagram, on her own campaign letterhead, on the floor of her own House of Representatives. She refused to answer. She wept on national television for the 2nd time in 4 years. For herself, not for Aurora James, not for the Israeli children, not for Officer Sicknick, for herself. Her mascara streaked down her right cheek, her lipstick smudged across the corner of her mouth. The country saw both. The country isn't going to unsee either. That refusal is the squad. That refusal is the Democratic Party that protected the squad. That refusal is 8 years of viral Twitter clips, 8 years of cable news contracts, 8 years of fundraising emails about a corrupt cancer that ended this morning when the cancer was asked to read its own diagnosis. Tonight, ma'am, when you take that lipstick off in front of your bathroom mirror, the country wants you to know it saw the smudge before you did. The country wants you to know it saw the 2nd time you wept for yourself in 5 years. The country wants you to know it heard you call Aurora James a partner. It heard you call vendor payment delays normal. It heard you say the Capitol Police were not above accountability, 21 days after they took bear spray for you. It heard you call the people who beat them with flagpoles peaceful protesters with legitimate grievances. The country heard every word, ma'am. The country is not gonna forget. And the country tonight, ma'am, every working-class American in their living room with their phone in their hand, the actual one, not the imagined one in the squad campaign ad. The country has only one question left for you. The 7 pieces of paper, ma'am, the ones still on the witness table. Were they yours? Yes or no?